This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. We're fortunate tonight to have as our guest Mike Hubbard, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mike, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
We have Mike on maybe annually, and he has been Speaker of the House since the beginning of the quadrennium. I like to tell this story about Mike's background. I've written a column about this in my weekly column that I doubt Mike, growing up in North Georgia, in Hartwell, Georgia, thought he'd be Speaker of the Alabama House of Representatives. Might have thought he'd be Speaker of the Georgia House. But his background, folks, is he went to the University of Georgia on a journalism scholarship and majored in radio and television at the University of Georgia. And while he was there, he was instrumental in helping Herschel Walker, help the athletic department get Herschel Walker the publicity angle of getting the Heisman Trophy. And then after he graduated from Georgia, Auburn came to him and said, "We want you to come to Auburn and do the same thing for Bo Jackson." So he went to work for the Auburn Athletic Department, and he's been instrumental, and I don't want to use the word orchestrated because both those fellows were deserving athletes. They were great athletes, probably should deserve the Heisman Trophy, but you have to have a little publicity to go with them.
Well, you did at that point for sure, and to answer your question, I never thought I would be in politics, much less be the Speaker of the House of Georgia or Alabama. But, you know, and I was in junior high school. I loved athletics, but I knew that I was not an athlete, and I wanted to be involved in it. And I had a great football coach who said, you know, we need somebody to write for the paper and to do our play-by-play and do a coach's show. And I worked in radio and loved it, and so I found my calling. And fortunately, I was able to get a scholarship to Georgia to do that, and then live right next door to Herschel Walker in the athletic dorm. My job was to make sure he made all of his phone calls and did the publicity for it. And you're right, after I graduated, I came over to Auburn to do the same thing with Bo Jackson. I like to say that it was all me. It had nothing to do with Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson, but that was not the case. But if you think about it, that was before the days of ESPN and all of the shows that you have now, and the instant feedback is before the internet. And we really had to publicize our athletes because that was the day too. There was only one televised game per Saturday, so you were lucky if you were on television one time a year. And, you know, of course, now every game is on television and things have changed. But at that point, we really had to educate people as to you know, who our athletes were. And Bo Jackson, most people don't remember this. In 1985, it was the closest vote in the history of the Heisman Trophy.
Who was runner-up?
Chuck Long from Iowa.
Is that
yeah.
right?
And so we had to really work hard to get that done. But, you know, it really did kind of give me a nice base for politics. I met Bob Riley when he was running for Congress the first time. I really liked him.
He followed Bill Nichols, didn't he?
He followed Ben Browder.
That's right. That's right.
So I got involved with him. I really liked him, and then he inspired me to get involved in politics. And my wife will never forgive him for getting me involved in politics.
Man, Op girl.
I sure did. Susan is from Op, Alabama. Susan Sorrells.
We're seen in the Op area. I'm in the Op News, but now she was a senior at Auburn when you were working in the athletic department.
She was a senior, and she was the president of the Tigerettes, which is the recruiting group. And I was a brand new college graduate working in the athletic department, and a kid saying that she saw my $16,000 a year salary and started pursuing me. But I started pursuing her and started finding reasons to go down to the recruiting office. And very proud of Susan. She's a full professor at Auburn. She is the associate dean of the College of Human Sciences.
I had forgotten that now. But Mike, now you started the Auburn Sports Network, which is your primary profession. Right. What year?
Started that in 1990.
So you've been doing that for 20 years now.
I have been.
And
it's been a while.
It's radio and television. The whole thing.
Radio, television, the publications. We
for all sports.
It is for all sports. Obviously, football is the bell cow. But yeah, I started out doing Coach Dye's television show when I first came to Auburn. I went to him and
was he the athletic? Was he head coach?
He was head coach and athletic director. Started doing his television show, and then in 1990 started the Auburn Network.
Does your district just encompass Auburn?
Well, the district as it's drawn right now is Auburn and parts of Opelika. But in the new plan, I had to lose about 14,000 voters, and so I ended up shrinking, and it's the new district is just Auburn.
That's one of the things we were talking about, Mike, about before the show. A lot of our viewers don't realize how much Auburn has grown in the last decade.
Oh, yeah,
and the
really
census
has.
was taken, it was the third largest county growth behind Shelby and Baldwin.
That's correct. Yeah, it's really growing. Real proud of our area. It's very progressive. Economic development is a big key, and of course, having the university there is a huge catalyst.
It really is. Now, are y'all going to gain a seat?
We are not going to gain a seat, but we're going to have Representative Dwayne Bridges, who is over in Chambers County now, comes in and takes over more of Lee County. So we'll end up having one less seat because Mark Tuggle is in Lee County now. He will go into just Tallapoosa and Coosa County. But you know, it's a difficult situation of trying to draw the lines to be fair, to keep the deviation to what we wanted it to be down to 1%, so that every district is roughly the same size.
I'm glad we touched on that because let's get into that a little bit with our viewers. We got a lot of things to cover because y'all have really covered a lot of ground in the first 2 years of this quadrennium. But reapportionment was handled, and admirably so. Congressional and legislative reapportionment, which is mandated by the Constitution, was handled within the confines of a regular session, which saved the state. And I might say probably one of the few states. Most states have to have a special session just to focus on reapportionment. You were able to get that accomplished congressional the first year in 2011, and then House and Senate seats last year in the 12th session.
Well, we actually, if you remember, we asked the governor to call a special session within the regular session. So it's the same difference. We were able to do it in the same time span and save the taxpayers the dollars of having to make the legislature come back and have a special session. Very proud that we did that. We probably saved the taxpayers, you know, over $500,000 by doing it within the regular session of for the congressional.
Both times.
Both times. But we got it done, and you mentioned all the things we've done, and it seems like we've been in charge a lot longer. It's only been 2 sessions. But
it does to me too. It's like it's been like a long time.
Well, as Speaker, it seems like I've been there a long time. But we passed ethics reform.
Let's go into let's talk about ethics reform, and then what else is after that?
Budgeting reform, the way we budget for education. Tenure reform, which is something that we could not even imagine coming up for a vote in committee before we were in charge.
Can I back up a second on that revolving fund? Explain just about a minute to our viewers about how you've changed the education budget, because in the last decade, prior to you being Speaker, how many times was the education budget in proration?
1 out of every 3 years.
So, you know, 3 out of 10 times it was in proration. So this project was designed to keep folks out of proration.
It is designed to prevent us ever from going into proration, which is horrible for students and horrible for local schools to go into proration, and universities as well. The way we did it in the past is you just kind of came up with an estimated number and said, "This, we think this is the amount of money we're going to have to spend," and then we would proceed to spend every dime of that and then some. What we have said is that's no way to run a railroad. What we need to do is look at actual dollars that have come into the education system. We look at a 15-year average, and we cannot spend any more than that 15-year average. And of course, it's always moving. It makes a lot of sense because when you have down times, then you're able to put some money and put it into what we call a budget stabilization budget, rolling reserve, if you will. And when you have bad times, then you can go and dip into that budget stabilization fund so that you don't go into proration. It's the way you do business, and it forces legislators to have the discipline to not spend every dime of money available.
Then the tenure law, how was that changed?
Well, you know, it's a situation where we had gotten ourselves into where a tenured teacher or employee, it would take a local school system 3 years and $300,000 to get rid of them, no matter how bad they were. We even had teachers in prison still getting paid by the taxpayers. That's unconscionable. We simply got it to where it takes 45 days. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have due process. You can't fire someone because you don't like their political persuasion or the color of their eyes or anything like that. It just makes it fair for the taxpayers that they're not continuing to pay somebody. We had a situation where they would just continue to appeal and appeal and appeal, knowing that they're going to lose because they continue to get paid, and the taxpayers were paying both sides of the lawyers. So it was a bad system. It's a system designed to protect the good teachers and to weed out the bad ones. And obviously the 99.9% of them are great employees, but anytime you have that many employees, you're going to have some bad ones. And we need to have the ability to get rid of bad ones and make sure that our school children have the best educators teaching them as possible.
Ethics was passed, a rolling reserve on the education budget, tenure was tweaked to make it more
Right.
amenable. What's another?
Tort reform.
Yeah.
We passed tort reform, the first tort reform in 20, 25 years. We were able to pass that. One of the big pieces of legislation last session, you know, it's not really the most politically expedient issue, but we changed the retirement benefits for state employees. It's something that other states are having to do. We're not the Lone Ranger. When you have New Jersey and Massachusetts, obviously Wisconsin is having to do it. We were in a position where we had to make the change, or either we were going to put the retirement system in peril long term. Now, I would have been out of the legislature by the time it blew up, and most of the legislators would, but the responsible thing for us to do was to make the changes now for new employees so it preserves the retirement for people who are already retired, people in the system now, and for future employees.
So now that was a savings to the state in the future of how much you think?
$5 billion with a B, $5 billion.
But now in the first each year going forward, is it hard to tell?
You know, it's hard to tell. Obviously, the big savings is going to be on the back ends because it just affects the new employees. But it's something that private industry has had to do. You have very few industries, if any, that have a defined benefit program anymore.
And that also affected university employees.
Absolutely.
Did you have some repercussions from your constituents?
Not really. You know, I think
because it's for new people anyway.
It's for new people, and when you explain that you're trying to preserve the retirement for people who are counting on that retirement, you know, it's not a secret of what's happened economically. It's no secret when you look at General Motors and the auto industry and how the benefits have absolutely collapsed. And lots of businesses now don't even offer any type of retirement. We're still offering a very, very attractive package, but we have to put the package together that the taxpayers can afford.
So and just think in the 2 years since the Republican majority, have taken over, you've addressed ethics reform, tort reform, streamline the pension and retirement system, tenure laws. You've covered a lot of ground.
Well, we had 136 years of pent-up frustration, so we kind of took it out all at the one time. But we have lots of other issues that we're continuing to push. Number one is jobs in the economy. Anything that we can do to make it more attractive for the private sector to create private sector jobs, that's what we're focusing on. And I put together a speakers commission on job creation, got feedback from all across the state, and a number of issues we've already implemented. One of them is dealing with red tape and cutting down on the amount of red tape that we force businesses to go through.
Right,
and so we're doing that.
There was a tax incentive bill that Governor Bentley touted very strongly that passed the House. It fell in the Senate.
It did.
Will he try that again next year?
We will, and you know, we're probably going to make some changes to it, Steve. I'm a big believer that we have to provide these incentives. It is a very good use of taxpayer dollars. We have to be competitive. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need incentives. We would just deal on our climate, on our workforce, the work ethic of the people, our tax system. We would win. But other states are out there competing. We're not operating in a vacuum, and we have to make sure that we have the resources to compete and always understand that we have to make sure that we have good quality private sector jobs for the people of Alabama.
Mike, you know, you're right about that, because I remember I was in the legislature in the House when we went after Mercedes.
Right.
And we were criticized in every business periodical, from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times, that we were a bunch of bumpkins. We just bought that Mercedes business. But let me tell you something, that was some of the best deal we ever did.
Absolutely. We would not have had Hyundai, Honda, Toyota, much less the suppliers. And now you look at Airbus that's coming. The first North American assembly plant in North America is going to be in Mobile, Alabama. And I was in Toulouse, France last week, and let me tell you, that is not only big for the United States of America, it's big for Alabama around the world. To say that of all the places they could have picked to build commercial aircraft, they picked Alabama. And then we're going to have suppliers that come in for that. We have aerospace, we have automobile manufacturing. We're really known around the world for our economic development, and we have to continue to make sure that we are training the workforce and that we're being fair to the taxpayers, which we are. And we simply have no choice but to continue to be invested heavily in economic development.
Well, you know, you touched on something that is interesting about that. You know, our economy has changed nationwide in Alabama, and you've heard it said for the last 15, 20 years that because you and I are from university towns,
Right.
we shouldn't say this, but a university degree is not for everybody.
Absolutely not.
And so how do you make sure that these Airbuses and Mercedes and Hyundais have the skilled workforce? My thinking is you do it through the existing junior college system, and you convert them more to a training.
Well, that's what they're supposed to be, and it's interesting. I just had that conversation with the new chancellor, and we're 100% on board. The 2-year system, they don't need to be many 4-year schools. And you're right, everyone does not need to go to college. As a matter of fact, if you're a welder right now and you get certified, 100% chance that you're going to have a job.
And you probably make twice what a teacher does.
Well, you make $70,000 a year to start off with.
That's more than teachers make.
So we actually have to make sure, and I'm convinced that the dropout rate that we have in this state, which is 40%, absolutely unacceptable, is because you have some students, they know they're not college material, they have no interest in going to college, and they can't see why they need to stay in school. We need to deal with them at the K through 12 level to understand that if you want to have a job, you might consider going into this field, be an electrician, be a plumber, be a machinist.
I've always thought that was better to do.
How
do you do that? How do you fund that to say, okay, we used to tell superintendents that when they would come to me and say, and I'd say, every one of your kids aren't going to be a rocket scientist.
Well, the goal of education is to have a job and to be able to make a living after college or after school, whether it's college or a 2-year or high school. So we have to focus on that, and I think the legislature, we're going to have to demand that. We're going to have to demand that we have outcomes.
In K through 12?
In K through 12 and in the 2-year system.
Well, how do you address that? How do you say to these superintendents who have this mindset that, we're going to make everybody college prepared, whether they make a 10 on their entrance exam or whatever?
The way we do it in the legislatures, Steve, is we control the purse strings, and we pretty much have to dictate a lot of what we expect through the appropriations process, and I believe that we will do that. I believe this legislature, the leadership of this legislature, understands the importance of workforce development. And I tell you, there are a lot of folks out there now who have college degrees that are unemployed. But I'll tell you, if you're an electrician or a machinist or a welder, then you have a good paying job, and we need to focus on making sure that every student in Alabama is prepared to have a job, whether it's required of a college degree or of a 2-year degree or whatever.
I'm on the same team. How do you do that from the legislative standpoint? You just budget to the 2-year school system, say, you're going to spend this much on work. We got to prepare for 1,000 jobs at Airbus and Mobile. So therefore, you folks in Monroeville at Patrick Junior College don't need to be teaching English, you need to be teaching welding. How do you do that?
Absolutely. I think we require the chancellor to come to us with a plan. And this is what we expect you to do. You come to us with a plan and how we fund that plan, and we like the plan, believe it'll work, then we'll fund it. If not, then we won't fund it. And it comes down to that. But I believe the new chancellor, I just met with him today, as a matter of fact, he is 100% in agreement with that. And they don't need to be 4-year schools. They don't need to be concentrating on building massive, beautiful buildings. It's all about getting people a skill to where they can get a job.
Mm-hmm. I've had actually some of these auto suppliers say we don't have an overabundance of people ready to go to work.
Well, and Airbus, when they come in, they're going to hire 1,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of folks, and it sucks up the workforce very quickly. So we have to start working now to make sure that we have the skilled workers needed to supply not only Airbus and others, but the suppliers that will come along with it. And there has to be a connection between business and industry and the 2-year system, because the business and industry knows what's needed, and that has to be communicated even to the K-12 level so that we can start pushing students in that direction to make sure that we have enough people going into the areas where they're going to need workers.
That's one of the incentive things that I think we need to include in the incentive if we're not already, that look, we're going to supply you with workforce and any type of thing you need getting students from this junior college. Are we doing that now?
Well, we're doing it to a certain extent, and I tell you, AIDT, Alabama Industrial Development Training Program, or what AIDT, Ed Castile's group, they do a phenomenal job.
Yeah,
and when I was in France, I mean, they were talking about that at the Airbus headquarters of how we are the best in the country at developing workers. We screen them, we do the drug testing for them, and we get them pre-qualified, and they're doing a fantastic job. We just need to take that another step further and make sure that we're training people in the areas where there are going to be jobs available and to keep them in the state of Alabama.
Well, you're saying exactly what I've thought about for years and years. That's what we need to concentrate this junior college and technical school, and I think people are looking for that.
Yeah, I believe so too.
The way we're heading as a state with automobile and manufacturing, because our auto plants are expanding. Mercedes is expanding, Hyundai is expanding, everything. Yeah. Mike, going into the biggest problem y'all gonna face in the new session, and has been for 2 years, you've inherited this ship of state, which wasn't too good financially.
Right.
And I told Governor Bentley I feel sorry for him. By the way, he's about to take over your entire House membership by picking them in his cabinet.
I know. I tell you.
Name who all he's taking. He took Gallagher out. He's taken
Greg Canfield.
Canfield's ADO, Gallagher. Before that, he took some older guys that were Mack and Thigpen over at ABC.
That's right. Well, you know, he just knows where the talent is. The talent's there in the House of Representatives.
His old buddies.
I'm saying he hadn't taken any senators. You notice that one.
Well, now somebody else. Are you talking about Spencer Collier?
Yeah, that's right.
Who else is in there took out of the House?
I think that's probably it. Oh, Elwin Thomas
That's
is the
right,
most recent one. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
He's going to be head of manufacturing housing. So yeah, the talent's just in the House of Representatives. So I mean,
he's taking all your people, but they'll probably be replaced by another Republican.
Yeah, absolutely.
In special elections. What I was going to ask you is going back to that in budget y'all have inherited. For 3 or 4 years they had the federal stimulus money lived off. Ended about the time y'all took over. Mm-hmm. The referendum passing helps you temporarily have some breathing room. How do y'all address the budget problem? You can't continue to cut state government?
No, I mean, we're going to continue to right-size government and to avoid and eliminate duplication. We're going to do that, and there's a certain amount of savings affiliated with that. But something that kind of got lost in the whole discussion is last session we moved 25% of use taxes from Education Trust Fund to the general fund, 75% of internet sales taxes from ETF.
Now, can you do that without a constitution? Are y'all supposed to be doing that?
Well, we can do that statutorily.
Okay.
And it was part of the referendum that people voted on, so it's in the Constitution. And so that has been a change that's been made. We are absolutely committed to fixing Medicaid, and that is a behemoth of a program.
Every legislator I've had sit in that chair, every senator, every representative, including yourself, something has got to be resolved about Medicaid.
It is.
Because once it's you still got, it's going to be exacerbated by the Obama plan, the additional, having to do the additional.
Well, and the good thing, if there was anything good that came out of the Supreme Court ruling, is that the states are not required to do that if it would be punitive toward the state. So we're not required to do it. If we were, it would absolutely bankrupt us day one. We'd have to add 400,000 people to the Medicaid.
What is the answer to Medicaid, you think?
We're going to have to, and we got a lot of smart people working on it, but we have to change it systemically. I mean, we have to change it to where we can control the required, the eligibility and what is covered. I don't know whether that's block grants. We have to be able to have co-pays. There are a lot of other things that we can do. Right now, we're handcuffed by the federal government. I believe we're going to have to go to the Medicaid nationally and say, look, here's what we can afford in the state of Alabama. You give us this money in block grants, or we do tax credits, or whatever. But we have to have a system that we can afford, where we can control the eligibility, we can control what is to be covered, and I believe that we can do it. It's going to be tough, but it can be done.
Mike, some people suggest that other states have gone to home health care in lieu of nursing home care, and it's been a real cost savings. Is that something that's going to be looked into?
I think we look at everything, and I think there's going to be a combination and a blending of lots of different things. We can look at what other states have done, what works, what doesn't work. Right now, our reimbursement is very unique. It's unsustainable, and we have to change it, and we're committed to doing that. The legislature is going to be a part of it. Obviously, it's led by the executive branch, but we have a great relationship with Governor Bentley and his team, and we're working truly as a team to make it happen.
So this 3-year reprieve that was with the constitutional vote gives you a time to see where exactly we're going to head with Medicaid in the future.
What this has allowed us to do is give us some breathing room, so we have a soft landing, or a softer landing, instead of a crash. And we were prepared to do whatever. I mean, but if you come in and slash state government 17%, a lot of people would be hurt. We're going to have an early retirement out, that we can take state employees that are eligible to retire, give them an incentive to go ahead and retire, get them off of the payroll. That will be a big help to us. That to me is a lot better than having to come in and fire a bunch of people and disrupt lives and not only services for the people of Alabama. I believe this is going to give us a softer landing, give us 3 years worth of time to where we can put all of these changes in place. And I'm convinced that at the end of 3 years, we will have, if it not solved 100%, we will be going a long way to solving the issue of the general fund.
Mike, you know, one thing that the governor's talked about recently, and I think is we really need to look at it from what we can do from the state angle, is getting the collection of the internet sales tax.
Oh yeah.
That's just not right for a retail store to offer something and have employees, and they got to compete with somebody. We've got to find a way to collect sales tax on internet.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Governor Bentley, President Pro Tem of the Senate Marsh, and I flew to Washington a couple of weeks ago. We had lunch with our entire Washington delegation to that point, and saying it's not a tax that's new, it is a fairness issue. And there's no way 20 years ago anybody could have figured there was going to be this much e-commerce, but that's the way it's going.
And it's going to go further.
And it is going to go further. I mean, you've got it now where you go into a local retailer who is there and a good corporate citizen of your community, and they're basically showrooms. You can take your smartphone and you can shoot the barcode, and it will tell you how much you can buy it for online, and it puts the local merchant at a competitive disadvantage. It's not right. And the law requires you to keep up with it and self-report it on your income tax. Well, you know, the honor system is not working very well because most people are, well, you can't, but most people are used to the retailer collecting it and remitting it. We force the local retailers to do it. We have to force the internet retailers to do the same thing.
There's some federal preclusion that you can't do unless someone has a
nexus
in the state.
But that's the whole point of this Main Street Fairness Act, which is a national federal bill. It will be the same for everyone, and all the retailers will have to collect it and remit it to the states and to the local communities.
Yeah. Mike, we only got about a couple minutes left. The makeup of the House now, so our viewers, Mike is Speaker of the House, a Republican majority and a super Republican majority. What would be a super? 65 or 66 is considered a super, isn't it?
66, I believe, is a super majority. We have 66, actually 65 right now. Elwin Thomas's seat is open, and Blaine Gallagher's is open, so we'd actually 64. And we have 2 special elections, and they will be filled before we go back into the session.
So the numbers now are
66. Well, we have 64, but we have 66.
So it's 66-39.
Correct.
Right now. After the election, what are you projecting in 2014?
Well, you know, that's hard to say. I don't know.
About the same, probably.
You know, I think we being Republicans, will probably pick up another 2 or 3 seats.
That's what
and that's fine. And you know, I have really worked hard at being a fair speaker, and I believe that the Democrats will actually tell you that I've been fairer to them than they were to us when we were the minority, and that's my goal.
Well, I tell you one thing, y'all have done a lot in the last 2 years, and you still got a lot on your plate with the budget problems.
We do.
But I thank you for being on the show. Our time's up. Folks, our guest tonight has been Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard, who represents Auburn and Lee County in the House of Representatives. He is in his 4th term in the House and is Speaker of the supermajority Republican members of the legislature. We thank Speaker for being with us tonight, and we thank you viewers for watching, and we hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thanks for watching.
All right.
Yeah, Sports Network.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.